Right, so get ready. So we're going back in time about 2,000 years to ancient Rome.
Ooh, time travel.
We are. You guys have asked for a deep dive into Germania by Tacitus. And
I'm excited.
yeah,
This is going to be a good
this
one.
is a fun one. It's not just a, like, boring old history lesson, though.
No, no,
Yeah.
this is like Roman reality TV.
Oh, I like that.
Barbarians and political drama and
Ooh, I like that. Give us the picture. Okay, so we've got Rome, the height of its power, this huge empire, and then across the Rhine River you have these Germanic tribes living in the forests.
yeah, forests of Germania.
Okay, so what was Tacitus so interested in?
Well, I mean, on the surface, Germania, it's like a Roman travel blog.
Okay.
Tacitus describes the tribes and their customs, what they wear, what they eat, but you got to read between the lines.
Okay, there's some subtext.
And definitely some subtext.
Tacitus wasn't just writing some neutral description.
Right.
Some scholars think that he was low-key kind of roasting his fellow Romans.
He's praising these Germanic tribes for their simplicity, their warrior spirit, their honesty. It all sounds very noble, right? Almost like he's saying, hey, Rome, remember when we were tough and virtuous?
I see, I see. Okay, so some scholars argue, though, that he wasn't just praising the Germans, right? What were his real motives?
Well, that's the million-dollar question.
Right.
And that's what makes Germania so fascinating, right? Because it gets used throughout history to argue for different points of view.
Right.
Sometimes people will use it to argue for this idea of the noble savage, this idea that societies that are untouched by civilization are somehow pure or more in touch with nature.
So like that idea that if we all just lived in the forest that we'd be happier.
Exactly.
Okay.
You see this idea pop up everywhere from, movies to political movements.
Yeah.
But of course, real life is more complicated.
Yeah.
And Tacitus himself, he points out some pretty brutal stuff about Germanic customs.
Right.
Like how they treated slaves or their taste for bloody revenge. It definitely wasn't all peace and love in those forests.
So maybe Tacitus was trying to make a point about how Rome was losing its way.
Yeah, maybe he was a little worried.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting question. Was he being a bit of a drama queen, or was there an actual threat?
Yeah.
Well, remember that infamous Battle of Teutoburg Forest? That happened just a few decades before Tacitus wrote Germania.
Yeah.
And that was like a total Roman nightmare.
What?
3 entire legions wiped out
Oh, wow.
in an ambush by a Germanic chieftain
Yeah.
who had actually trained in the Roman army.
Oh, so a Roman-trained
Yeah, turncoat.
turncoat took down some of Rome's finest. That's got to leave a mark.
Yeah, you better believe it.
Yeah.
It was a huge blow to their confidence. And you can imagine all the Roman senators just freaking out thinking, if these so-called barbarians can do that, are we really as invincible as we think?
Right, right. Okay, so he's writing with the echo of that defeat still sort of hanging in the air.
Right.
I'm guessing that kind of influenced how he depicted these German warriors.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just imagine he's describing them as so strong and fearless, always ready to fight.
Right.
He talks about their piercing blue eyes and their fierce expressions. Imagine reading that in Rome just a few years after Teutoburg Forest.
Right, yeah.
It's kind of spooky.
Yeah, it's like he's saying, hey, Romans, these guys are not just some peaceful nature lovers.
Right.
They can be a real threat
Exactly.
if we underestimate them.
Exactly.
That's-
Germania is like this psychological snapshot of their anxieties.
Oh, interesting.
They're fascinated by these barbarians, but also terrified of what they represent.
I see, I see.
Yeah.
So there's this weird mix of admiration and fear.
Absolutely.
Wow. I never realized how much this ancient book still affects us today.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Tell me more about this noble savage idea, though.
Oh, yeah. So how it's played out throughout history.
Yeah.
That's where it gets really interesting.
Okay.
Well, think about how indigenous cultures have been portrayed, in movies, especially like older movies. They're often shown as living in harmony with nature.
Right.
Wise and spiritual, but maybe a little naive.
Yeah.
And that's that noble savage trope in action.
Okay, so I see how that can be problematic.
Yeah.
Because it's like we're romanticizing their way of life
Yeah,
without acknowledging the real struggles that they faced.
exactly. And sometimes it even goes further. The noble savage idea has even been used to justify some pretty terrible things,
So,
like colonialism.
I see.
This argument that, these people are backward, they need us to civilize them.
Yeah.
Which is obviously, a dangerous way of thinking that ignores the richness and complexity of other cultures.
So it's not just about romanticizing.
Right.
It's about power.
It's about power.
And who gets to tell the
It's
story.
exactly. You
Right.
got it.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. The noble savage idea isn't always a bad thing.
Okay.
I mean, think about modern environmental movements.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them draw inspiration from indigenous cultures and their deep connection to nature.
So the same idea can be used to justify both oppression and positive change.
Yeah, pretty much.
That's pretty mind-blowing.
It's all about how you use it, right?
Oh, yeah.
Ideas are powerful tools.
Yeah.
It's up to us to use them responsibly.
Right. It goes back to intention.
Right, exactly. But getting back to Tacitus,
Yes.
it's hard to say for sure if Fieschi truly believed in this noble savage idea or if he was just using it to make a point about Roman society.
Right. Right.
What do you think?
He definitely wasn't shy about pointing out Roman flaws.
Oh, yeah, he was definitely throwing some shade.
He seems to be contrasting the Germanic tribes' simplicity with Roman decadence.
Right.
Like how they held their councils out in the open, anyone could participate,
Yeah.
versus the Roman Senate,
Yeah.
which was full of political maneuvering and backstabbing.
Yeah, very exclusive.
Yeah.
Not very transparent. It's like he's saying, look at these Germanic tribes. They're tough. They're honest.
Yeah.
They value community. Maybe we could learn a thing or two from them.
But, I mean, is it a bit simplistic to say that all Germanic tribes were noble savages?
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, weren't they just as capable of violence and cruelty
Oh, totally.
as the Romans?
Yeah. Tacitus doesn't sugarcoat things.
Okay.
He talks about their love of feasting and fighting and harsh punishments, even their tendency to gamble away their possessions.
Yeah.
And sometimes even themselves.
Wow. Okay. So, so Tacitus was basically the Roman version of a blogger ranting about how society is going downhill.
Maybe, yeah.
I can relate.
We've all been there.
Yeah.
But even with those less than noble details, it's clear that he was fascinated by these people.
Yeah.
I mean, he describes their clothing and their houses, their marriage customs, even their hairstyles in detail.
Yeah.
So
It's like looking through a time capsule and seeing how another culture lived and ate.
Oh,
and even
yeah.
partied.
exactly. I mean, and that's why studying history is so important, right? It helps
Okay.
us see beyond those stereotypes and understand the complexity of the past.
Right.
But it also makes us think about our own assumptions and biases. I
Wow.
mean, how often do we fall into that trap of us versus them?
That's a great point.
It's so easy to do,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
But Germania is this reminder that even 2,000 years ago, people were grappling with those same questions of identity,
Yeah.
cultural difference,
Yeah.
and the fear of the unknown.
Right. But what about the legacy of Germania?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you mentioned earlier how it's been used throughout history.
Oh, yeah.
So give us the tea. What are some of the ways that Germania has been used and maybe misused over the centuries?
Well, hold on tight, because Germania has had quite the journey through time.
Hmm.
So Germania, during the Renaissance, it was rediscovered,
Okay.
and people started using it to trace their own history,
Oh,
especially in Germany.
like, hey, we're descendants of these tough German warriors Tacitus wrote about. Awesome.
Pretty much.
Okay.
And this fascination with Germania really took off in the 19th century with the rise of nationalism in Europe.
Hold on. How did nationalism play into all this?
Well, imagine you're trying to build this sense of national pride,
It's okay.
right? You want people to feel connected to this shared past,
Yeah.
this common heritage.
Mhm.
Germania provided this ready-made narrative about the origins of the Germanic people
I see.
and all of their great qualities.
Right. So using this Roman text to basically say, like, we've always been awesome. Look how cool our ancestors were.
Yeah, exactly. And, it's not just about pride.
Yeah.
I mean, this interpretation of Germania was sometimes used to justify some pretty aggressive political moves,
Okay.
especially in Germany.
I can see how that could be dangerous. Taking a text that's already biased and twisting it to serve your own agenda.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that history can be a powerful weapon.
Yeah, it is. It really is. But Germania has also been used to explore this whole idea of tribalism.
Yeah.
That instinct to form strong bonds with your own group and sometimes, view outsiders with suspicion.
It's a very human thing.
Yeah.
We're social creatures. We form these groups.
Right.
And it's easy to fall into that us versus them mentality.
Right.
And Tacitus, he was definitely tapping into that.
It's funny you were saying that before about how he was contrasting the Germans and the Romans.
Yeah.
It's like he's also saying, hey, things were better in the old days.
Yeah.
Like he's saying that maybe Rome could learn a thing or two from these so-called barbarians.
It's almost like he's holding up a mirror to Roman society,
Okay.
pointing out their flaws and hypocrisies.
Oh, interesting.
He admires the Germanic tribes' simplicity, their military prowess, their
Yeah.
supposed lack of corruption.
Yeah.
It's a pretty scathing critique when you think about it.
Wow, I never really thought about it that way.
Yeah, it's pretty fascinating.
So Germania isn't just about the Germanic tribes.
Right.
It's about Rome's own insecurities
Exactly.
and anxieties.
Yeah. And I think those anxieties still resonate with us today,
How so?
We still worry about threats from outsiders.
Right.
We still romanticize simpler times. We still grapple with those questions of identity and belonging.
It's pretty mind-blowing to think that this one book, written almost 2,000 years ago, can still spark these kinds of conversations today.
Absolutely. And that's the power of history, right?
Yeah.
It helps us understand not just the past, but also ourselves and the world around us.
But it's important to remember that history is not objective truth.
Right.
It's always filtered through the lens of the writer and their time.
Exactly. That's why when we engage with NY historical texts,
Yeah.
but especially one as complex and as influential as Germania, we have to ask ourselves, who wrote this? What were their biases and motivations? How might their historical context have shaped their perspective? Who was their intended audience? And how has this text been interpreted and used throughout history?
That's a lot, AT, to think about.
It is.
But I guess that's the point, right?
Yeah, I think so.
History isn't just about memorizing facts and dates.
No.
It's about asking questions and challenging assumptions and looking at the past with a critical eye.
Exactly. And, in doing so,
Yeah.
we not only gain a deeper understanding of the past, but we also sharpen our critical thinking skills, which are essential for navigating the complexity of our own world, right?
Absolutely. Well said. Well, it's time to wrap up our deep dive into Germania, but before we go, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought-provoking question.
Okay, I like it.
Tacitus mentions the Battle of Teutoburg Forest, where the Germanic tribes inflicted this crushing defeat on the Roman legions.
Yeah, a real turning point.
Imagine yourself in Tacitus' shoes, writing just a few decades after this traumatic event. How might that event have influenced your portrayal of the Germanic tribes? Would you be more inclined to emphasize their strength, their ferocity, their threat to Roman power? Or would you be more inclined to emphasize their virtues, their simplicity, their potential as a model for Roman society to emulate? Something to ponder as you continue your own exploration of Germania.
An excellent question to conclude our exploration. I encourage you to delve deeper into Germania and consider how this pivotal battle might have shaped Tacitus's narrative. And remember, history is not just about the past. It's about understanding ourselves and the world around us.
Thanks for joining us in this deep dive. Keep those minds curious, and we'll see you next time.